Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to look into Jenkins and how to actually start up a Jenkins server on our own local machine and how to get started with that and what are the normal use cases with Jenkins. So let us just jump right into it as usual. So I'll just drag the screen right here. First of all, what is Jenkins? To those of you who have never heard about Jenkins, yeah, you probably all of you have heard a little bit about Jenkins, but it is an automation server. If you go look at Jenkins.io, then you will find a lot of cool resources like documentations and the plugins, and you can also ask the community questions, etc., etc. So the big thing, the good thing about Jenkins is that it has been around for many years. So there's a huge ecosystem and also a huge community, and there's a lot of free plugins that can be used by default just by picking them from the shelf. So it is really a mature automation server system. But it is actually much more than that because all the plugins. So the plugins gives it a lot of integrations to a lot of third-party systems that will actually make things much easier. Now, before we continue, so now that was a short description, I know that, but before we continue, then I want to start up my Jenkins Docker server because I know it's going to take some time. First of all, if you want to install Jenkins on your own, if you want to have a server running, I recommend that you start up a Docker container based on the image named Jenkins /Jenkins. So do not take the one that's just named Jenkins and official image. So if you go to Docker Hub and search for Jenkins, then the first hit will actually be Jenkins official image, and it has been downloaded 100 million times. But look at the update. Look at the update date right there. It has been updated 4 years ago. The one you want is Jenkins /Jenkins right here. It has been updated 1 day ago, and there are actually a lot of versions in here. There's also an Alpine version. Do not take the Alpine version because it will give you, if you use the Node.js plugin, then you will get a weird env error. Of course, that can be solved also. So if you really want the Alpine version that takes up a little space, then of course feel free to do that. That's okay. But if you are a beginner, then just take the normal Jenkins and then the latest Jenkins latest. So the tag should be latest. So let us just start up this Jenkins container right here. I've created this Docker compose file right here, and as you can see, it's quite simple. I have a version in the top. I have some services, but I mean some services, then I mean one service, and I'm exposing the port 8080 by default. Let us start it up right away. If you don't have the Docker plugin for VS Code, then definitely install it because it's awesome. It's very cool, and it gives you this little Docker tab in the left side, and it just gives a good overview of all of the of all of the containers that you have, of also for the images that you have downloaded right here. So right now I have a lot of I actually have a lot of Kafka stuff and a lot of camel stuff right here. So then I can just mark those if I want to, and then right click and say remove, and then this should be removed. So that's a good way to clean up your containers once in a while, like I do right now. Remove this. You can see they're stopped because there's no there's no check mark inside this the square box right here. Remove. And whenever you run something, if you run a Docker command manually, then write --rm for automatically remove, and you're done using it. But that was enough with that. Let us just right click on this one right here and then say Docker compose up. Yes, then it will start a Jenkins master. And then when it's done doing that, then we can actually then I will start showing you some theory. I just want to see that it actually pulls as it should, and it actually looks fine. So I want to start up. I actually want to see that it works in the browser before we continue. So let us just see right now. Press a button. Yes. Let me write Docker. Yes, I could also see that actually here right here. We can actually see it's running right there. So we're happy. I want to see some logs. Let us see how do we do that. View logs. And here we get this code right here. So that is one code that you need. This is a token, a password, one-time password that you need to take to set up your Jenkins server right there. Then we can go to localhost port 8080. And then we can unlock Jenkins with the token that we just stole from the log files. So that is how you get started. And here you can actually choose how to get started. Do you want to install the suggested plugins, or do you want to get started from scratch? If you're new to Jenkins, actually also if you have used Jenkins before, choose install the recommended plugins. And this is what takes the time. And that is why I wanted to start that before we look at some theory about how Jenkins usually is used. And this is not just Jenkins, this is any automation server that you could think of. The situation is always that you have some code, you have a cool system that you are coding, and this is the developer right here. So you're coding something, then you push this code to some kind of Git repository, so a source control management system that can be GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, etc., etc., etc. There's a lot of systems out there. And then when you do that, then that Git repository, all of them actually, they support a webhook functionality. That means they can actually send a HTTP request to your automation server, in this situation Jenkins right here. So that means that when you push the code, and of course Jenkins needs to be available from the outside. When you start it up manually, locally on your own system, then of course it would not be available to get a webhook from the outside, except for if you know how to route the traffic to your Jenkins servers. But so don't think about that in the beginning. But in a professional setup, in a real life setup, then you would actually have access from your Git repository to Jenkins, so you can send this webhook right here. Then what happens when the webhook has been sent? And the webhook, when I say webhook, it's nothing magical. It's just a HTTP post request. Then you will get some information for which pipeline that should actually be run, and then the pipeline script would actually run. And the pipeline script can be anything. It can be a shell script. It can be whatever you want to. It could be Python, Groovy, whatever language that you choose. It can also just be. Usually it will be like steps divided into stages on your Jenkins machine. You would have a builds. You would have you will have a compile and test step. Then you would have you'll also have a build stage maybe, and then it's a bit different how you would actually set up your stages. But you'll have multiple stages where one of them is test, one of them is build, one of them is deploy. You could also have a separate one for end-to-end test maybe, for all your Selenium tests. But then this pipeline, when it's done building, then it can actually push the image to if there's no errors. Of course, the pipeline will also check for errors and your code quality with SonarQube. But then if you didn't mess up too much, and if you didn't ruin the code quality and the code coverage for your unit test, that could also be something that you could measure on inside this pipeline right here. If you don't mess up that too much, then everything will go fine. And then your last step will be to push, or not your last step, one of your last steps will be to push your Docker image to the Docker registry. And then after you have done that, then you will tell your Kubernetes cluster or Docker Swarm or whatever you use for keeping your production pods or containers. That system will then be told to actually spin up some start a deployment based on the image that you just pushed. This means that your Kubernetes actually has access to your Docker image registry. And you do that with a pull secret. I'm just giving you these keywords. I'll not show you how to do that right now. I've done that in other videos. So pull secret from inside your Kubernetes cluster will make it possible to actually get that image and then spin up a pod. And when you hear pod, then just think about Docker container, because you can actually have one or more Docker containers running inside this pod. Yeah, so that is the normal setup. That is some theory. So then you would actually you could have a development environment that is always refreshed with your newest code that you are pushing right here. This is very common, and do not underestimate this task. It sounds easy when I just talk about it like this, but it can take some time to set up, and it can be a bit tedious. And that is why sometimes if development teams are busy, especially in the beginning, they want to show the business some progress and something, then maybe they skip this part, and then they just manually deploy to a test to a development environment. Don't do that. Don't cut corners like that. Set up your Jenkins pipeline as the first thing. So you don't have to think about it later on. That is my advice, at least. Then we go to page 2. What is the Jenkins architecture? Do you only have one server that will do all the job? Then the load on it would actually be unbearable very fast. So that's why they have an architecture where you can use slaves or agents. So it's not called slaves, it's called agents. So the Jenkins master will have multiple agents, and those agents can look differently. They can have different software installed. One agent can be a Windows agent, so it has Windows software installed. One agent can be a CentOS, maybe if you are programming something or you want to deploy something on Red Hat, then you can maybe test it and use the same utilities from CentOS. So then you would have a CentOS agent, and maybe the last one would be an Ubuntu Debian agent, right? So you can have different agents right here, and you can have as many as you want, and you can actually you can name them and group them. So the Jenkins master actually, so the pipeline knows which agents that is possible to use for this given task right here. The Jenkins master then knows the state of these agents. If one has been taken down, maybe agent 2 is now out right now, it has been turned off, then of course there's only agent 1 that would actually be used instead of agent 2 if there's a pool with agent 1 and 2 that can be used for this pipeline right here. So that is the architecture. We have a master and we have some agents right here. And then we have some different pipelines, but let us see how far we actually are now. Oh, now it's actually done with installing all of the plugins. So now I will say this is my username. My password is the same in this situation right here. Some kind of email address, and then add who does not exist.com like this, and then save and continue. This instance configuration right here is important. You need to type in the right URL, and this URL will be used in the emails when Jenkins complains that you actually broke the pipeline because the code that you pushed was actually flawed. Or maybe there was not enough tests in code coverage in your tests. Then you will get a complaint email that your pipeline is broken, and the domain name needs to be right here in the beginning when if you're just spinning up your own Docker container with Jenkins like I am right now, then you just keep it to localhost, because there will be some links inside that mail that complains, and those links will actually they should have the right domain that your Jenkins server is also using. So right now we'll just leave this. This is fine for us. Save and continue. Save and finish. Start using Jenkins. Thank you very much, Jenkins. It was very, very easy to set this up, right? So I can hear you agree. So I'll actually press Manage Jenkins now. And then I'll say manage plugins, because I need a new plugin. The code that I have created a React project right now, and I want that to be a part of the pipeline. So I need Node.js. I need some Node.js. I need to run npm CI and npm build. So I need the Node.js plugin right here. So I'll take this one off. Download, install, and then install after restart. Whenever Jenkins restarts, then your container will actually stop, just so you know. That means that you need to go here to look at containers, and at some point it will actually stop. And then you need to start it up again. I'll just press refresh here, refresh. Hey, look, now it stopped. So then we right click, and then we say start this container up again. Of course, if you're using this and you want all of your plugins and all of your jobs to be persisted, then of course you need to make a volume mapping. I have not created any volume mappings right here. That means that if I delete this container, then I have to start all over with typing in the password and installing plugin and all that. Okay, what kind of project do I have? I have not showed you that. I have this React project inside the same folder right here, and my code is publicly available on GitHub, so this is a public repository. This means I do not need to think about credentials when I have my Jenkins server to pull out the source code. There's no credentials. Everybody can take this code if they want to. In my app right here, this is a React app. Let me just show you. If I right click right there and say start the server. Let's see what happens then. Then I start my React app, and this is my cool React app, and I want this is what I want to test by trying to build it to see if there's any errors. So let us log in. Mike, keep me signed in. I don't know if that worked. In old days it never worked. That check the door when I checked that other one off, but I don't know nowadays. Then we press new item, and here comes the different pipelines that we can create. We have a freestyle project. Here we can do whatever. We can just put in some steps. Then we have a pipeline that can span over multiple agents, etc., etc., etc. What we need right now is the multi-branch pipeline, because that is one of the most. You can also create a folder, not that interesting. You can also create an organization folder. Again, this is just a way to actually organize your jobs in Jenkins with. And then you have the multi-configuration projects. What is that? I've actually forgotten what that is suitable for projects that need a large number of different configurations, such as, okay, that is where you will place your configuration. So if you have some configuration you want to place for environment-specific stuff, platform-specific builds, etc., then you could place it in there. I've never used that personally, I must say so. I've always used the multi-branch pipeline, because usually my multi-branch pipeline like this, because usually you would actually have more than one branch, right? You have a master branch where you put your production code, and then you have maybe you have a development. If you use trunk-based, it depends on how you code. If you use the Git flow, then you would both have a master branch, you would have a test branch, you would have a development branch, you would have a lot of feature branches, and of course then you definitely need the multi-branch pipeline. If you use trunk-based programming, I would recommend that you still use trunk-based programming with releases. This means that either you will create a new release branch every time you want to release, or you would actually move your code from the development branch, which you call your trunk, and then you would move that to master, and then you would actually deploy from master. That's how I would recommend it. And then again, you would have multiple branches. Also, even though that you're running trunk-based development where you all code on the same branch, then you would still sometimes have some feature branches. If you're doing something that is that is very different from your colleagues, and that would actually maybe refactor a lot, then you usually want to take that out so you can commit your code once in a while. If it's a bigger thing, you should try not to actually. You should always try to code in the same branch if you can to, because then you would actually meet earlier, and you would actually. You would actually exchange code much more often. That means that you can cooperate much better. It's much more efficient with trunk-based development. I know that some like the Git flow, because there's actually there are different reasons. One can be that you have a 4i principle that there needs to be at least 2 developers that has approved the code. You can still solve this with the trunk-based if, when you merge your code from development to master, then you make a pull request with all of the developers on it, and then everybody just looks down through the code. Does it look fine? And you can do that, and you will do this exercise then. Let's say every sprint, for instance, or every week, then you could do that, and then see that there's no, there's only legit code being placed onto the master branch. But it's much faster if you can code on the same branch. I would definitely recommend that trunk-based development. Okay, so here we have a job. This is my, that was the code, my multi. What should we name this? This is display name, yes. I'll leave this empty, because then it will just take the default name right up there. Multi-branch, that is the description. And then we say branch source. Here we will choose GitHub. And GitHub. Then we go to Jenkins tutorial right there. And then we paste in codes. And then we say SSH, take that code right there. No credentials, no. Oh, this is HTTPS, so we need the HTTPS version right there. So usually you would add some credentials, username and password, or a token. It could also be a public SSH key, and then of course you would also have the private key on your server. You would have a private public key set on your Jenkins server, and then you would have the public key would then be mentioned in GitHub, for instance, if you use GitHub. So, but the credentials, that is another area. It's not that complex. So just read up on it if you need that part. Press validate. If you do not continue. If you do not get this one right here, credentials okay, connected. If you get some kind of error, stop and then fix it right there. Discover branches. Leave this just by default to begin with. This is the kind of what should the system actually react on? Should it be pull request or whatever should it be? Yeah, you can look into that if you want to, but just to begin, just keep it default. That's okay. Then we have some build configuration right here. This is important. You want to use a Jenkins file because we want all of our configuration and our infrastructure, we want that as code. So that means that we have created a Jenkins file with what should actually happen when this pipeline actually runs. I have already created this Jenkins file. I'll just show this in a minute. Scan multi-branch pipeline triggers. Right now we will scan for branches manually. If you enable this, then Jenkins will actually go out and look for new branches once in a while. We don't want that right now. We want to do that manually by pressing the play button ourselves. And then there's one right here. You definitely want to discard old items. Yes, fill out this one because else your server is full. Your disk space will be you'll run out of disk space. Maximum number of items. Sometimes you keep this number. You keep it high if you have some kind of statistics. If you have a QA that is interested in how your quality performs over time, then you keep this number high. But I would say that you keep it short, right? If you don't need the data, then don't let it just be there to be messed up, right? Yeah, then you can add an icon. You can add some health metrics. Let us skip that for now, and then we will press apply and save right here. Press save, and then what happens right now? This is the indexing, and that's what I talked about with the scan. So now it actually scanned the project. It found the Jenkins file. That's very important. If you get any errors right here, you need to fix them as the first thing. One branch will process. That means that if we found one branch that is that's the main branch, and yes, I have only created a main branch right on this repo right here. If I want to scan for more branches, then I just press this button right here. Then it will scan again for branches. So they will actually do that right now, but I'm impatient, so I just press up. Then when you press your job right here, then we can actually run the pipeline like this, and then we will actually. Then the job will actually run in a site right here, and when it's done, then either you will get a failure or you will get a success. And we can actually already see it actually ran from main right away, and we actually got an error. There's an error right there. I can see that. So let us look at the log. We'll just press right here. What is the error? I know what the error is, but let's just for fun, we'll just look for that error right now. Yeah. We have no installation of Node 16x. Okay, this is because, and now let me show you the Jenkins file for what actually happens when you're using Jenkins. We have Jenkins file right here. We have the stages that I talked about earlier. We have an installation stage right here. This is where we run npm CI. If you're not used to a React app, when you run npm CI, that's the same as npm install. So that means it will download all of your JavaScript modules and prepare them. So it's kind of like you're used to Java, then it's like kind of like when you download all of your dependencies for your Java application, then that would be this part right here. So npm CI downloads all of your modules into the node_modules folder. This tier right here, this is actually a plugin that you can use. That means that you can actually change the directory. That's because my directory right here is my tier. It's not out in the root. That means I need to change the directory context to my app like this. And then I have wrapped all of this inside a Node.js, and that is why it was important that I installed that plugin. That means that I can say run this in the context of Node 16x, but I have not installed that on the server in my plugins yet. So I've not defined that, so Jenkins does not know what that is. So next step, build, the same story. I'm just running npm run build, but again, Node 16x is missing, so they will fail there. This is where I build my application. And this is where I run my tests in the end. And I set CI equals true right here. If you have a React app, then if you set the variable CI true before you run npm run test, then it only runs once. If I did not have this part applied to my test, then it would actually run the test, and then it would wait for me to correct errors, and then it would actually run again and again and again. So it will not continue in the flow. So this is why this is important to have CI equals true when you're running on a Jenkins server. Now let us fix this Node 16x, copy right there. We'll go fix that. We'll go to our plugins, manage Jenkins, manage plugins, and installed. It's actually, let's go back a bit. I was a bit too fast. Dashboard, manage Jenkins, Global tool configuration, that is the one I wanted. Yes, yes, yes. And here we can actually configure Git versions, JDK versions, Gradle, and Maven, Node.js. Yes, and this is exactly what we want. So I'll paste in the name that I've used. I could type in Mike here as long as I also typed in Mike right here. Those names just need to match. Install automatically. Let me just choose one version that we want to use. I want to use the latest and greatest 16. That's right there. And apply. Let us see what happens. Saved. Sometimes I'll just save it now. I should actually have it now. So let us go look and see what actually happens now if I press play. Okay, so let us now see what actually happens. Console out. Let us see what happens now. The code is being extracted. Oh, what is happening right now here? Unpacking. So now it's actually installing Node automatically because it needs to use Node 16 and it can just install it automatically because it's not already there. I'm very happy. I'm very, yeah. It's excellent with that plugin. Thank you, whoever you are that actually made that plugin. Maybe I should look that up. It's actually okay. We can look it up while it's installing because it's a bit boring to look at. So I'll go to look at plugins, Node.js like this. Let us see. Here we have Node.js. Who's actually behind this? Where do we have the documentation, labels, maintainers? Those guys right there. Thank you very much for a cool and awesome plugin, Frederik and Nicholas. Thank you very much. So now that was my local machine. Let me just check right here. Oh, yeah, it's still running right here. What is it doing now? It is running npm CI, so it's downloading all those modules, all those React modules. That is what takes the time right now. Then it is running npm build. I can see that in the log. Npm run test. Now it's running test. That's the last stage. And it succeeded. So when you get this, you'll be so happy when you get this because there's so many hurdles in the beginning. You'll be stopped a lot, especially when you're new to Jenkins. Then you will come. There will be a lot of stones on the way that you have to sweep away before you can actually get this nice piece of log output right here. Finished success. Yes, I'm very proud of myself every time I see that. I just want to show one thing. If you go to the main right here, then I can see, then I can press my multi-branch pipeline, then I can see all of my branches right here. If I would have 10 branches, then those would be listed right here. I'll press the main right here, and now I can see my stages: install, build, test, and then checkout is source control management. So all of these stages right here, that is the names that I have in my Jenkins file. So if I wrote Mike or something else like here, then you would actually see the name Mike here instead. So you can determine your own stages. It is extremely flexible with this Jenkins system right here, this automation server, and that is one of the cool things about it. Now, this was a very, very compressed tutorial for how to get Jenkins up and running, and there are a ton of things to say about it. First of all, the job that we actually created right here, where we pressed new, you should actually not do that. There's a plugin that's called Jenkins DSL, and it's a whole thing by itself. If you go to plugins right here, and then you search for Jenkins DSL, then you can actually define what all the clicks that we actually did. You can define that in a file instead, and then you can. Here we have a job DSL, this one right here, and then you can actually create, you still need to make your Jenkins file, but then you can create your DSL like this, and then you can decide what should actually happen with a declarative way, and you can also use a script way. And when you look at the documentation, there's a bit much to read in the beginning. But go for the declarative way. Do not go for the script way in the beginning, at least when you're new to this. But this actually just means that you will actually have a Groovy file located inside your code, and then you can actually tell Jenkins to use that Groovy file instead of you having to actually go and clicking this up manually by hand. We want configuration as code. We do not want to do stuff manually. Yeah, so that is actually what I want to show you. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.